to episode 5 of the Big Box PC Gamers Hangout. I'm KG in the middle of nowhere, and we have a selection of sundry degenerates to entertain and enlighten you. Today's topics are going to include everything was better back then, was it? Compare games back then and today. Must all game collectors be super nerdy, or can some be attractive and cool? And for show and tell, as well as our usual free selection, the box games we're all most proud of having. To carry on, if everyone would like to introduce themselves, I know you don't see each other in the same order I do, but starting with, let's go from left to right, Joe.
Hi, I'm Joe Garrity. I am the curator of the Origin Museum. I spend a lot of time looking up weird and various facts and holding on to all the bits of ephemera that was Origin.
Joel?
I'm Joel McCoy. Been playing computer games my whole life. I'm the founder of the Facebook group that we're all a member of, and as my title card says, I'm a massive loser.
Mike is still muted. Moving on. Pascal.
Yeah, hi, I'm Pascal from Germany, collecting big box games, mostly PC games and mostly adventure games.
Roy? Hey.
Hello. Am I muted or unmute?
We can hear you.
Okay, awesome. I'm Roy, I'm from Holland, and I collect big boxes, like most of us do, I guess.
Welcome to the support group.
Yeah,
Rashin. I think that's intro enough.
Hey, what's up, guys? I'm Toast.
Hey.
Hey.
Dr. Retro.
Yeah, my real name is Sjoerd, but you guys can't pronounce that. I have a YouTube channel, Retro Game Collector, but for some reason my camera is not working. Well, that's my main thing on the internet, my camera. Collect pretty much everything that has to do with video games. And also big boxes, of course.
Stuart, are you there? Okay, no he isn't. Right, let's start. Does anyone have a big box game they're really proud of having in their possession? Show of hands, please. Okay, Joel, hey.
I had to really put some thought into this because I don't really own anything that you guys would consider like massively rare. I guess this is, but probably the most rare thing that I do own, or the thing I'm most proud of, is the Kingdom of Amalur Reckoning Collector's Edition, which has an interesting story behind it. 38 Studios, I don't know how many of you have heard of those guys, but it was Kurt Schilling's game company. And it was Kurt Schilling and Tom McFarlane and R.A. Salvatore were going to start making video games. And this is the one and only game that they ever made. The interesting thing about the Collector's Edition is you can only get it directly from their website. So not a lot of people even knew that it existed at the time. It was fairly expensive. I don't remember how much I paid for it. It seems like it was a couple $100. When it arrived, they're very rare in good condition, and mine is crunched. The reason is because it was shipped in a huge box, and it came with this absolutely massive statue of a troll thing that Todd McFarlane produced for the company. And it's really heavy. It's like super solid. I don't know what it's made out of. Some sort of a resin or something. And that came in this big box that's separate from the game box.
That is a big box.
Yeah, it's huge. The box that this was shipped in had no packing materials, so the statue was just floating around, like banging up against the actual game box, which is here. So they're pretty rare and in good condition. It came with a lot of your standard kind of collector's edition stuff. The game is in here. This one, the code's been used on Origin, so it's not as valuable as some of the other ones. This is a box of like cards of some kind. I'm not sure, like a collector card sort of thing. It's got a map in here. It's got a little baggie. It came with some Chess X Dungeons and Dragons dice. There's a map in here, some sort of cool stuff. But since no one knew about it really until after it was released, they get pretty high prices on eBay. I've heard that a new copy that hasn't had the code busted can go for $5,000. The ones that have been used like mine, there's one on eBay right now that's sold for $600 in a used state. But that's probably the one that I'm most proud of having, and probably the most rare one in my collection.
What's the game like?
That's the funny thing, is the story behind the game is more interesting than the game itself. The game is sort of like a rudimentary RPG, sort of plays like World of Warcraft, like you could tell, because 38 Studios' main mission was to produce an MMO. That Kurt Schilling was a big fan of EverQuest. He wanted to make an MMO, and the game they were working on looked really good. My wife and I were in a panel with R.A. Salvatore at DragonCon, and you filmed that, did you? I'll try to link videos to that because it's very interesting. We probably don't have a lot of time to go into it, but this game, they say, didn't sell enough to keep the studio floated, which is odd because this game sold over 1 million copies. So there's a lot of money shenanigans, like Kurt Schilling owes the state of Rhode Island millions of dollars and all kinds of crazy stuff. The story is fascinating. I'll try to link it in some stuff about it in the group. But the game itself is like just kind of okay. I mean, I never really finished it because it wasn't that amazing that I just wanted to go nuts with it or anything. But it's an interesting piece. The collector's edition is an interesting piece.
That's really interesting.
Yeah. I actually really would like to get a copy of that. I mean, I only heard about it once it came out, and it got very good reviews, and the studio shut down like immediately after. So you can get like a non-collector's edition copy for like $10, very cheap, sealed, whatever. But if you want the collector's edition, yeah, the cheapest I've ever seen it was like $500, and usually it's north of that. And there was a few different editions too, because there's one I think that Todd McFarlane signed, one he didn't sign, and then,
yeah, that was called the Signature Edition, which I do not have, which goes for way more. You had a chance of getting either Kurt Schilling to sign it, Todd McFarlane to sign it, or R.A. Salvatore to sign the statue. He signed the base statue. The problem with that edition is R.A. Salvatore and Todd McFarlane are both extremely available, and for the most part, for autographs. So people take the statues to conventions and get them to sign them. So there's more signed statues out there than there were versions of that released. So you don't know if you're getting one that was originally signed. The Kurt Schilling one, oddly enough, was the one that no one wanted, but it ends up being the most expensive one after the story blew up because he's like the face of that doomed company. So everyone wishes they had gotten a Kurt Schilling signed statue.
yeah, I sure wish I did.
What was the year of release on that?
You know, I'm not sure. Let me look that up real quick.
Couple years ago. It's not old, Joe. 2-3 years ago, I'm guessing.
Never
Well,
While we
listened.
go research,
Very interesting story.
while we go research heavy, I believe it's Russian Toast has something to show us. You're up.
Hey, what's up, guys? Can you hear me? I don't know how well you can hear me.
Yeah, we hear you.
Loud and clear.
This older game actually Fade to Black. It's like Flashback 2. This game is fun. This game is funny because like I just have the box. I don't have any of the internal stuff. I also have this like I got a whole stack of boxes, but some of my more favorite ones, of course, This right here says Ultima Online, the eighth age, no, 7th anniversary edition. And I've been playing this game for 17 years, 18 years. I've been playing. I still play Ultima Online pretty much every day.
I was on when they launched the European server in '96.
Yeah.
Sorry, 98.
Most recently, I've been. It's funny because like I can show you here. I don't know if you can see here. I got 2 screens. This is it's a map from Ultima Online. I'm sorry, Photoshop. So I have like this map I've been drawing. You can see. I paint these maps, like I paint them, like literally paint the map for Ultima Online,
That's
and then
amazing.
basically load it into the game and load in. So I run my own Ultima Online servers. Sorry, the music in the background, someone playing guitar. But basically, I run Ultima Online servers, and that's what I do, and paint the maps by hand, like from scratch.
That's incredibly cool. Joe, I bet you are the comic map.
I'm like flipping out. This is awesome.
That was incredibly cool. Thank you so much. Thank you so much, and we want to see more of your maps, I think. Right, next with a game they're proud of. Volunteers?
I'll go.
Yep.
Go on, Joe.
All right. This is probably the game that I'm most proud of actually having. I don't know if I showed anybody this before, but this is Ultima Escape from Mount Drash. There are about 7 copies in the world. I don't have a box. This is nothing more than a printout of the cover of the box, but I did manage to snag a cassette. I was able to find a cassette on eBay. The story behind this is that this particular one was, I think, the 3rd one ever found, and somebody actually found it on eBay in a box of Commodore 64 and VIC-20 cassettes that he bought all in one shot for $10. So somebody basically he snapped it up at a bite, and then somebody let him know that this one was valuable. He put it up on eBay, and there was a horrible war and a horrible fight, and I was one of the people. I was the high bidder on it. So they're not worth as much as they used to be, but I'm still incredibly proud of it. And my mounting techniques have all but fallen along the wayside, so it's kind of slid down. It looked real nice in its day. I got to take the frame apart and put it back. But it's just the cassette, but I'm incredibly proud of it. If anybody knows about this game, the game is horrible. It's a Sierra game. And it's, oh, yeah, Pascal is going, yeah, I'm familiar with Mount Drash. But
actually, Joe, I know 2 ones who have the boxed version of it. Within this inner Sierra collector circle, there are some who have it. And the last one who got his one from eBay paid like around $3,700 for it or something like that.
Mine was not nearly that much.
Mm-hmm. That is so incredibly rare. I'm just happy that it's not an adventure game. Otherwise, I was looking for it as well. But I'm not interested in having it in my collection. But this is one of the holy grails here you can look for. Yeah.
Yes, it is. There's a great story behind it too. Literally, the story of it is that Sierra originally held the license for the game when Garriott was working hard to start Origin. After he had left Sierra, they still owned the license for a while, and they said, could somebody please make a game? And they asked Garriott's friend, who was still working for Sierra, and they wrote up this whole story about the evil Garantrots. Those are the kings that you have to defeat, the Garantrots. And this game was, nobody thought it was ever even released, but there was someone who was one of the original Ultima Dragons that used to spam in the forums all the time, in the news groups, I'm looking for this game, I'm looking for this game, I'm looking for this game, and he actually got a hold of one, and he was very excited about it, and that's when the whole thing took off. Like I said, this is probably the third or the fourth one that was found, but that original copy still goes around. As a matter of fact, I think it's owned by someone in Germany now. He ended up selling it for a ridiculous amount of money. But anyway, that's mine today.
I was wondering, Joe, why is it so scarce? Because it's Sierra, it's a big publisher, Ultima, big series?
Basically, it's because there were not very many made. It was when the VIC-20 was basically on its way out. The Commodore 64's price had dropped dramatically about 1983. They didn't do a big run of them because they were just kind of feeling out the waters to find out if Garriott would sue them or not. And so there weren't that many, and it didn't sell well. Okay. So
how many are
there are very many to begin with. Plus, it's considered an Ultima, and that's what made the desire so high.
Yeah, true. But what's the estimated number out there? Because a print run usually has like a set number.
I believe that, how many were in the print run? I have no idea, but I would guess it was between 5,000 and 8,000 copies. But to the best of my knowledge, there's less than 10 that exist.
So there is a chance that somewhere in a dark, danky warehouse there's a box that has the rest of them.
I'll let you know when I find them.
Sure.
Isn't there like an urban legend about that game being like tossed in a landfill off a cliff or something?
I thought that was E.T.
No, that's E.T.
That was actually a misquote, and that's kind of my fault. In the news groups right now, you can still look up alt.binaries, and go through the news groups, and you can find that literally one was found at the bottom of a cliff in Canada. One was found. Basically, a game company, or not a game company, but a software store was throwing out all of their excess software in the late 80s. And they, instead of going to the local dump, they dropped it off the edge of a famous cliff that's known for everybody dumping their garbage out there. So this was found among them. And what I think is funny is that the story got twisted into somebody dumped all these drashes down a mountain. It's like, that's not true. It was found amongst a garbage dump. That's all.
I'm going to jump in with the game I'm proudest to have. It's not because I have anything particularly rare. My collection, while having some interesting items, pales in front of Joe's or Pascal's or most other people's. But something that's quite important to me is actually owning original software, which I think we'll probably touch on in the future. I grew up in Cyprus, and there was no copyright agreement. So what we had were game stores selling these. This is a bootleg. This is a bootleg of Larry 3. It is a big box bootleg. It's painstakingly made. You've got floppy disks, nothing too exciting here. Then you've got, this is the copy protection sheet. Someone literally hand copied all that stuff out. And here is the photocopied version of the None Tonight magazine that you got with the game. I think that's all the copied stuff. These are my own backup discs, and I've got some notes. And here's a similar box of Quest for Glory 2. I guess they had someone in the US who was posting over the stuff, and then they color photocopied and made up these boxes. But because there was no copyright law, it was really hard to get original software because people just wouldn't bring their original stuff over there because they figured it would get stolen entirely legally. So it was only much later that I managed to get hold of, for example, this. It was before the Sierra games went completely ballistic in terms of price, and I think it's a really nice copy. I've got all the discs. This one came with a copy of the hint book shoved in there, which was very nice. None Tonight. and it's even got the tacky postcard, which is always worth having, and is a bit tends to get missing, and the Sierra newsletter and catalogue and so on. I've also similarly eventually managed to get hold of not Quest for Glory, but as I will always know it, Hero's Quest. I don't seem to have Quest for Glory 2, or at least I haven't found it in my boxes yet, so I thought I'd got a copy, but I may not have done, in which case I'll be attempting to find one. But only having access to bootleg software in during those sort of formative years of gaming, as soon as we had a legit software store, I took up hanging out and helping out there pretty much constantly. But it's really given me a great value, particularly for big boxes, particularly for all the stuff you get. And sort of only having the option of bootleg software, I think, really makes me treasure original software a lot more. It makes me rather sad that we've lost the big box ethos. But I do love the effort that went into these bootlegs.
What were the prices of the bootlegs in Cyprus? Do you recall?
I honestly can't remember. They weren't ridiculously exorbitant, but also working out the exchange rate's a bit weird because the Cyprus pound was worth something like £2 and $4 US, so it's hard to convert. If I find one with a price on it, I will let you. Oh, there we go, 16 Cyprus pounds. So that would have been the equivalent to. I'm not entirely sure about the dollar conversion, but that would have been. Yeah, that would have been like new software prices, new legitimate software prices equivalent. Except, of course, once they started bringing stuff into Cyprus, the price actually doubled. So they just went to using the British pound price. So everything got more expensive, but it was totally worth it.
So cool. That's cool. That's incredibly cool.
Who has something to show?
Yeah, I got
Thing you're
something.
most proud of.
Got my camera working.
Awesome.
Yeah. One of the first things I got when I started collecting PC big boxes, I'm a big fan of the Little Big Adventure series, and that was the reason why I got into PC big box collecting. But when I started, I had no clue about rarity. I had a lot of Nintendo, a lot of Sega, etc., but no clue what PC games were rare. And I was talking to a friend of mine in the UK who goes to car boots. And he said, well, I pick up a lot of PC games. Are you looking for some particular items? So I just named the games I had as a kid. Well, I played Doom, I played Wolfenstein 3D, I played Commander Keen. I want all of those in the original boxes. Well, it turns out those are all pretty rare. But a week later, he contacted me and said, hey, well, I found something at the car boot for you. And it's one of my most prized possessions. It's the UK release of Wolfenstein 3D, and this is, as far as I know, the only release that has actual swastikas and Hitler. There he is.
Having lived in the UK, they have an undue passion for Hitler. I mean, the History Channel there is basically nicknamed the Hitler Channel. If it involves anything about the Second World War, they're nuts for it and all the symbolism.
Yeah. Yeah, but everywhere else they didn't have the Nazi symbols, and even the German release had the Nazi symbols removed, I believe. But yeah, this is the only version that has the actual main bad guy in the game. And that same week or the same day, he said, "Well, I have Wolfenstein 3D for you, and I have something else that's a part of your childhood for you." And I didn't know it was ridiculously rare because you couldn't buy it in stores. But he also had this one. The original not shareware, but the original bought version from Doom, and nice. you could only get this by mail ordering it directly from ID or id. I had no clue. I was just very happy to have Doom and Wolfenstein, and later on I found out how hard to find these are. And I have some more really rare PC games, but those combination of rare and the childhood memories I have with these games makes them most special to me.
Yeah, those are pretty special. Pascal, turn your mic on.
Very cool.
Thanks a lot, KJ, for the hint. I'm still looking for the UK version of Wolfenstein, and it was on eBay a few days ago.
It was?
But the seller removed it. Already a few guys were bidding on it, and he removed it. And I was in discussion with him, and he said, he had some. I didn't believe him. He said like he found out the discs were not working, and he don't want to sell a game where the disc not working and stuff. So
that's bullshit.
Other guys contacted
He totally
him.
had a higher offer.
Yeah.
He later told me that he got a lot of offers for the version, even though the discs are not completely functioning. And he told me that someone offered him a four-figure sum for it. So I don't know how much, but it got sold for a lot of money. So
Holy crap!
This is what I mean about the artificial inflation of game values. I mean, these are great, and I love this stuff. That the prices stuff goes for. I can't. It's really hard to imagine ascribing actual value like that.
It heavily depends, to be honest. I'm watching a lot of games I already have in my collection to see if they show up, how much do they cost if they show up and stuff. It really, really depends. There's a game, if you take Soft Porn Adventure, for example, it can sell 1 week for like $1,500. The other week, it may be sold for only $300, $400. So what it is worth at the end. It only depends if there are one or two crazy collectors at the same time willing to throw in as much money as possible just to get it. But
it's worth what people pay for it.
It's really hard to tell what it's worth.
Yeah. I had an example last week. I'm also a big PlayStation collector. I was looking for one particular game to finish my PlayStation collection. Popped up last week, and I immediately side bid. I emailed the guy, listen, I'm going to give you $200 or 200 euros for it right now. He said, well, yeah, of course. So got taken off immediately. Probably I overpaid, probably by even 100 euros, but still, I now have the game, and that was most important to me. So maybe with the Wolfenstein guy, it was the same.
You probably didn't overpay. You probably underpaid, actually. Because, I mean, if you thought you were overpaying, you would have waited. But you thought that maybe someone's going to pay more, that's why you would try to get it as soon as you can, right?
Yeah, well, for me, it was mainly, I've been looking for that one for 3.5 years. I can spend the money, and I don't want to wait anymore. I want to complete the set. So, yeah, well, fuck it. Here's 200 euros. I want my Tekken 2 commemorative disc.
Tekken 2, okay.
The Wolfenstein that Pascal mentioned, I saw that on eBay also, and it was like €1 or €2, and then it was taken off. It was very cheap when it was taken off. This guy that was offered a lot of money, that could have been €50 for all we know, or £50, whatever it is. Like at the end, that was a lot of money because these games were worth $5 or £5, £5, whatever you want to call it. And really, somebody was willing to pay £300 for it. So, I typically don't do these things where I contact the guy off site just because I hate when people do it when I'm looking at an auction. But I'm not criticizing you for doing what you did to get your Tekken. I understand, but it's a tough. There's two sides of it, I guess. It's tough to.
I definitely agree with you, and I think it's the second time I've done it in the last 2 years. But for this one, I've been looking for it so long, and the problem is a lot of people know that I'm looking for it. And I'd rather just pay 200 now and get it than have it artificially driven up because people know I'm going to go for it.
Yeah, I can totally understand that.
Yeah, you probably have the same thing, Joe. With my YouTube channel and a lot of people following me, they know I'm looking for the Tekken 2 commemorative disc, or they know I'm looking for whatever Commander Keen games. If people know you're bidding, well, we're going to bid it because we know he wants it anyway.
I agree on what Stuart said because I think at least if someone put something on eBay for $1 and see how it ends at the end of the auction, I think it should stay there. No? I don't like the reasons they later get to remove it because someone offered them like $100,000 or whatsoever. I mean, it's a tough call. If I offer something and someone offered me $1,000, no, just get it off eBay and sell it right now. I'm not sure how I would act on that, but yeah, it's always a hard one to decide on what is wrong and what is right there.
I would probably think, why is someone offering me $1,000 if it's at €1 now? What's the actual value? It would make me think.
Yeah, it's a decision there. No? If you stick to that and see if it gets to $1,200 or even more, or no? is it a one time of a deal?
Well, what does everybody think of that? I personally used to get absolutely furious with folks putting stuff up on eBay and then they disappear because everybody says, will you accept to buy it now? Will you accept to buy it now? And they basically get it yanked off of eBay very, very quickly. And that used to frustrate the all get out of me because I'd be watching it and I want to bid on it and, you know, I want to use eBay the way it's supposed to be used, but I used to get into this fervor of anger because all of a sudden it would disappear. And I think that's not playing by the rules.
Yeah, I'm somewhat inclined to agree on that front. Okay, does anyone else have a particular treasure to show, or shall we move on to one of the main topics? Aha! Right.
This is my box I'm most proud of. It's absolutely not rare. It's nothing special, but it's the box. Every time I see it, it makes me happy. I talked about this box before, I believe, but then I couldn't show it. So this is my chance to show the box off. It's the foiled box with the folding front and the back side. And there's completely nothing in the box except for the jewel case with CD and one piece of paper. So, like I said, nothing special, but it's my favorite box in my collection.
It's a sweet box.
Yes.
Pascal's wandered off, and he's usually up to something when he does that.
Yeah, he did show something earlier, but I didn't know what it was.
Yeah.
Can I show something, KG?
Yeah, of course.
So I just want to say, first of all, I'm not proud of any of my games because I don't like that word because it's not like I did anything with the game or anything like that. I just like bought it. But in terms of what's my favorite, I also love all my children equally, so I can't like pick a favorite. But I'll just show something that's somewhat rare. This is a game which I don't know if anybody has even seen or heard of before. Because I only saw it one time, which is the time it ended up in my collection a while ago. It's a text
one
adventure.
of those adult games.
It is not. Just every game that has a woman on the cover is not necessarily an adult game, but it's a text adventure for the IBM. It says IBM version on it, and basically it's a text adventure that was made in 1984 in a box. It says. You get Inheritance, which is a painting of a beautiful woman and some obscure note, and then a stranger we're talking about. Soon after you take delivery of the picture, a stranger comes to your home offering to buy the picture Earthly Delight for $75,000 cash. This makes you suspicious, and remembering your uncle's note, you flatly refuse to sell. The next night, you're asleep in your bed, and someone tries to break in, I guess, and steal it, and then it's some intrigue. So that's what happens when you don't sell your Drash or whatever with Joe. So keep that in mind. But anyway, it's just cool because it's a game from 1984 for the IBM PC. It's pretty old and it's an adventure game, and I don't see anybody ever talking about it or I don't see it ever for sale. I don't know if it's out there or not, but anyway, it's cool.
I've never heard of it. I see some developer credits on it.
Yeah, well, it says by Roger Webster and Daniel Levitin. I never heard of those people. It's by Datamost, which is, I guess, they made a bunch of stuff. You can't see it there, but yeah, they made a bunch of stuff, but I don't really know too much about them. It's a pretty standard game. Again, it's one of those things that like may be very rare and nobody's looking for it, so therefore it's worth nothing right now until like Pascal starts looking for it, and then it becomes worth $1,000.
Pascal, do you have anything from your collection?
Let me think about that, Stuart. Yeah, as a starter, I have something like this. This is Mystery House.
Yeah, we knew this was going to be good.
So this is framed, and I leave it in a frame because it still has this how you say the plastic. It came with it is not sealed, but it still has the original plastic film. So it was opened carefully, and it is complete with everything, with a disc and registration card and another card with some information on it. So, as I guess most of us know, this was the first graphical adventure game. done by Sierra back in was it? Back in in the 80s, 1980. Was released in May 1980. First graphic adventure game of the world.
If a PC game can be sexy, that's one that is.
Yeah, actually, it was no PC game, but on the other things I agree, Joe, of course. Yeah, I got all the funny things. This one is labeled as Highway Adventure 1, as you can see it maybe somewhere over here. So it's Highway Adventure number 1. There is a Highway Adventure 0 available too. This was Mission Asteroid, but it was released after Mystery House. So Mystery House is labeled as the first graphic adventure game of the world.
Is there a reason why the numbers were reversed?
I think I've read something like they started developing it and Mystery House was finished earlier than Mission Asteroid, I guess. So they just stick to that.
I think it was supposed to be like a short introductory type game. I think I remember hearing that. It was like not a full-fledged, full-size adventure, and therefore they called it number 0. And I think they bundled it with some of the other ones at some point, and they had a lower price point or something like that.
Now that Mystery House, Pascal, that's called a large folio. Is that correct?
You mean the folder thing or what?
Yes.
The size? Yeah, I know it just as a large folder. I'm not sure if you call it otherwise.
I think that edition is they call the Sierra Venture folder, right? That's the Sierra Venture one,
exactly.
Right?
That is, Sierra had different names back then for the company. This was the Sierra Venture release. It was not the first release of Mystery House. You have smaller folder releases available. There are like 2 or 3 other smaller folder releases available. They come just in a plastic bag and were sold by Ken and Roberta individually, driving to stores, hand them a few copies and sell it on that way. So this is actually like the 3rd or 4th or so release. But the other ones are it is incredibly hard to get a Mystery House, and the other ones, the smaller ones, are just incredibly rare, and there's even no chance to find one. I'm not sure how to do that. I know a few collectors who have one from the earlier versions, but of course they stick to it. They're not willing to sell it, and this would be pricey, I guess, if someone tries to do so.
How much was this one?
Actually, I didn't got that one on a single base. I was very lucky that I got one of the huge Sierra lots that was out there a few years ago. So it was a lot of games, which like over 30 games in it from the earlier Sierra games. And that lot was like a bit more than $3,000, but compared to the games, it was like nothing. So it was like I have like $100-something per game, and there were all the Mystery House and the Highway Adventure games from Sierra included, and a lot other rare ones, a complete time zone in box and so. And I sold all the other non-adventure games I'm not interested in, and I reduced my price for the lot by that in a heavy way. So this was really a great deal, I think. I'm not sure.
Sounds like a good deal,
yeah. Back then it was. It took me a while to get that money that quickly. That was another story, but
I think this kind of nicely segues into our main discussion point for the day. Everything was better back then, but really, was it? You've got a lot of differences between gaming now and then, not least for because of the kinds of budgets that are involved. A AAA game these days is likely to draw in more profit than a blockbuster movie, and so the priorities have changed. The audience has changed. In a lot of ways, the audience is more egalitarian, more spread out, because there used to be a bar of both wealth and technology to access games, which may have sort of affected the audience as well as the available technology to make the games, having an obvious effect on the way they were designed. certainly design was a lot tighter in the past. Or if you just look at the fact that your classic games, your Wolfenstein 3Ds and so on, fit into less than 5 megabytes of disk space, well less than 5 megabytes of disk space, as I recall. Even when you take into account the low-res graphics and sound of the era, that is some efficient coding. Now everything sprawls. My housemate just downloaded the 80 gigabyte client for Elder Scrolls Online. So you've got very obvious differences, but I think the efficiency of design in older games is really what stands out to me. But I think everyone has their own take, positive and negative. So, opinions, please.
I find that I kind of, in a way, enjoy modern gaming more than the old school gaming experience. Not so much in the big box capacity, because we all love the stuff, and in the modern sense, we're missing the stuff. But as far as actually playing the games, ever since the Xbox 360 generation ended, or began, I should say, I find myself finishing more games than I ever did before. The reason is because their storytelling and their pacing all got a lot tighter. These folks started hiring people like writers and cinematographers and things that studios back in the 80s didn't have the money or the ability to hire these folks. So the games have got more streamlined, and part of the reason why that appeals to me more now is because I'm an adult now, and as a guy who works, more than 40 hours every week for my job, I don't have the time that I had as a kid to sit down and just kind of dink around on Ultima 7 for an entire weekend, like I used to. So, as an adult, it's almost like games have matured with me, because games were born at the same time I was, essentially, and we've grown up together, and now they're making games for people just like me, and the people making them are in the exact same boat that I'm in. So I think I put my hat squarely in the modern games category.
I mean no disrespect to Mr. McCoy, but you have no idea what the hell you are talking about. No, I'm joking. But I am raising a point here. I would respectfully disagree with what you just said. I come to believe that games from a while ago had more depth. There is a group of series that have a lot of depth related to them, but they're few and far between. Most of the games that I enjoy because of depth of storyline are like the old Ultimas and Wing Commanders, and yeah, perhaps they were not written by professional writers, and there's a running gag about Wing Commander that, who was the traitor, because it was a traitor in every single one of the games, but I personally
Garrett was like a one-time natural talent that we'll never see again. So he was a guy who had the whole package, right? He was a good writer. He was a good everything. He could do it all. Games like his were pretty rare back then, and I played, a lot of those type of games. And I've got a ton of games on that shelf that I've never finished because Ultima 7 I've never finished because that game is hard as hell. I do like the ability.
I've invested more hours in Ultima 7 than I invested in Skyrim and Civilization put together. Maybe not Civilization, but definitely more than in Skyrim. And I put 130 something hours into Skyrim.
I have 160 hours or so in Skyrim, so I'm with you on that.
I have to call BS on Joe's whole statement, only because admitted in the past, Joe, that you haven't really played any games from beyond like 2000. So therefore, obviously, you're not going to find any enjoyable ones in that pile. I mean, that's just logic here. You can't fight the logic. But I just want to say, I'll let you respond in a second. I just want to say that I think that there's some truth to what you're saying in the fact that like nowadays you chunk out these massive amounts of Call of Duties and all these Me Too games and clones and whatever else, and a lot of it is not. It's not the same type of innovation that they had back in the day. I think that's certainly true. But I also think that a lot of the games from back in the day were not very good. So, for example, Mystery House, very collectible game, not a very good game in my opinion. Wizard of the Princess, a pretty bad game. King's Quest 1, mediocre. I mean, for the time it was amazing because like all the great graphics and animation and 3D effects and all that in King's Quest 1, but as a game today, does it hold up? Not really. So, I mean,
Seminole is not the same as objectively good.
Right, right. And so my top games of all time happen to be around the 90s, like Day of the Tentacle and King's Quest 6 and Secret of Monkey Island. But that's partially because of nostalgic reasons. There you go. Partially because of nostalgic reasons. Partially because they're actually really, really good games. But,
I actually played the Monkey Island games for the first time about a year ago, but don't ask. I played a lot of LucasArts after Monkey Island, but I never played the Monkey Island games. I played them on a phone, on the tube, on the way to work when I still lived in London, and they were absolutely amazing. I think adventure games from once you got to a certain level of graphical quality, adventure games in particular age really well. I found the same when I replayed Beneath the Steel Sky. So I think some games do objectively hold up, but most of those you need to be into the late 80s before modern gamers or even people who've acclimatized to modern gaming can sort of cope with the terribleness of the interfaces and the graphics. I've endured some terrible interfaces while playing retro games.
Correct, and it comes down to exactly what you're talking about, KG. I mean, I've heard so many analogies of people comparing video games and computer games to Hollywood. And we had the era of the silent movie, and we had the era of color, and we had the era of talkies and like that. And you can go back and look at all those silent movies, and there are only a few that everybody basically points out and says, these are fantastic. You never hear of the Keystone Cops movies being considered absolutely fantastic bits of movie history because it's a one-man show and it's just mind candy and it's a bunch of people running around and hitting each other on the head, and that was that. What I'm saying is that it matured at the same time. I agree with you in that, but we all matured with it. So is that posing an issue in regard to the question itself? I mean, do kids today look at old Ultimas and just go, I'm not even going to get involved because Ultima 7 looks like a Nintendo game that I don't think is cool?
Probably yes. But things like Zork still hold up today. I mean, who plays it versus whether it's good or not, I think there's two different questions. So I agree, Joe, that kids nowadays to get them to play like a Zork or Ultima 7, let alone Ultima 1, is going to be a very tough sell. But it doesn't mean they're not good games. I mean, I think fundamentally how I see this is that back then there were, like I said, everybody was innovative. I think now you probably have close to the same output of good games you did back then, but you also have tons and tons of other garbage that's flooding the market, especially like if you look at the casual market, like forget it, there's tons of stuff out there. So the good games are still there, but you got to really know what you're looking for. You got to search for them a little bit more. But there's good stuff coming out today.
Agree. I mean, I'm still enjoying. I enjoyed playing a lot of games back then, and I'm still enjoy playing new modern games today. But I'm a bit like how to say, disappointed how many bad games shows up today. We are talking about like over 30 years of game development, and there should be like a million books out there on what to do right and wrong in a game, or what to avoid to have a bad game. There are so many games that are disappointing me, and especially in the adventure game genre. And that is where I think I see what Stuart said. I mean, there are a lot of games which are interesting to collect, but gameplay-wise, they were not that good at all back then. But given at the time they were developed, no? and the possibilities they had with tools, with trying new things and stuff, some of these games did something for the first time at all. It is hard to compare, to say which game was good or bad back then and is good or bad nowadays. So it's a bit hard to say. How can we say something 20 years ago is it better compared to a game today? Yes or no? No, that ends in adventure games. I liked them a lot back then. If you did something stupid, you died. You cannot offer that today for the audience, because they played for like 5 minutes, they die. No one took a save point if it got autosave or so, and they say get away, and I jump over to the next game and I don't continue playing it. So it changed a lot in ways how we play, how often we play, how game developers. If you speak to game developers, Ron Gilbert was in an interview. He said he likes shorter games today because he's getting older. He don't have so many time to play games. So if he develops a game, he takes his age into development as well, to say, hey, if I want to create a new game, then it has to be something I can finish in like 3 hours. Show me an adventure game that... Yeah, KJ?
I kind of like the way narrative density is coming. I mean, it shows up more actually in RPGs and adventure games, I think. The sprawl of Skyrim and so on notwithstanding. But it used to be, I mean, particularly if you go back to some stuff like, and this is the reason a lot of people find the Bard's Tale games are particularly bad offenders for this, virtually unplayable, but a lot of 80s RPGs do this to a greater or lesser extent. You've got dungeon after dungeon of repetitive content that's packed in there just to justify the exorbitant price, because inflation being what it is, and then being no Steam sales and so on, games used to be worth a healthy wad of cash. I mean, the entire hobby used to be, the preserve of people who had money to throw around to a large extent, in a way that it's almost hard to process now. But if you are going to pay the sort of the equivalent of a week's wages or something for a game, you've better get a healthy load of entertainment out of it. And I think the fact that we pay less for games now means that they feel that they can be more compact, and in a lot of ways that means there's less gratuitous content. You've got greater narrative density, and I play games for narrative. I mean, I sometimes play games to blow the shit out of stuff, but I am a fan of narrative, so I think that's a key difference.
See, I get really irritated when a game is more, now anyway, when a game is more than like 10 hours long, or even more than 8 hours long. It just because I think a lot of these guys have a feeling that they need to pad these games out because older games were longer. And I think it was Assassin's Creed Unity I was playing recently. I finished that game and I loved that game, even though the critics all crapped on it. But that was a great game. Get it if you haven't got it. Anyway, it felt long, and by the time the game was over, I was very much like, just finish. I just be done with it, And it just felt like it just kept going on and on. And modern games have a tendency to do that. And when the critics like crap on a modern game that's like, what is it, that Order of 1866 or whatever that PlayStation 4 game is that just came out, I think it said it was like 5 hours long. And they were all crapping on it for that, and I looked at that and thought, okay, well that actually sounds pretty good to me.
I think more criticism on that one was that it had fairly bland background. I haven't played it, let alone reviewed it. Most of the reviewers I know criticised it for being fairly bland in terms of in terms of its storyline in particular, or rather incoherent. It had good moments and some good scene setting, but some fairly bland aspects of levels and a storyline that never meshed together. But it still looks like an interesting game, potentially.
I've played some really good games that were about 5 hours long, and what I find is I'm more likely to want to replay those games since they're that short, rather than if they're like 12 hours long or whatever, 16 hours long, like Assassin's Creed Unity. It was a good game, I thought, but I'll never play it again because it just took too damn long.
Yeah, but I get your point, but I would say it really depends on which genre we are talking about. I mean, if I see modern adventure games, they are like 5 to 7 hours. The story is not really developing. It is the character is so there's no depth, like Joe said before. There's no depth in the games, and I want to go into the story. I want to learn about the characters, the background. No? I want to have a story that develops through certain steps, and so. You don't find that for my opinion, I haven't only played a few short games where I say really that was done very well there, where they had enough time to let the story develop. I agree on other
Sometimes
games.
work.
I don't want to.
Alcatraz, for example, was quite a good example of.
I
Alcatraz.
can't recommend the Telltale that Wolf game that they did that was based on the Fables comics, which is a modern day adventure game. The way I know Telltale comes up a lot, especially in the Sierra groups, because they're kind of carrying the torch of modern adventure games at the moment. But their system of the episodic system, I personally think is a very good one. Like I really enjoyed the Walking Dead games. I really enjoyed that Wolf. I can't remember the name of it right now. The Wolf Among Us, right? Was a great game, and they're very bite-sized chunks. I don't know how long the actual game ended up being as a whole, but the episodes were about 2 hours a pop.
The Sam Max games work well as episodes, but I think it's interesting the way, this is going off the topic to a certain extent, the way Telltale's left aside the standard adventure format like they did in Sam and Max, and
I don't really call them adventure games.
Move to interactive movies.
Exactly.
Yeah, I think the thing is the game could be 10 hours or 40 hours, but the problem is when it's 40 hours because they pad it out.
Yeah.
So in the case of adventure games, they put in some really hard puzzles that nobody can figure out. And you're stuck on that one puzzle for 5 hours. So you look at that's well, to me that's not enjoyable 5 hours. The first 15 minutes is enjoyable, not the other 4 and 45, right? And in RPGs, they do it by just padding it out with fetch quests and grinding and all sorts of other nonsense, which I personally can't stand. If the whole thing is 40 hours of a really great story, then okay, I'll just I probably also prefer it shorter, Joel, because I agree with you. We're older now, but I can sit through the 40 hours in chunks. It doesn't have to be all one shot. We do 2 hours here, 2 hours there, as long as it's entertaining. But if they're just stretching it out, then who needs it?
I like a well done sandbox, and that kind of sort of necessitates length, but I think the thing with a well-done sandbox is you should have a main quest that's probably in RPGs should be sort of 20 to 30 hours, but you want to have sandboxy elements that don't affect the progress of the main quest. I think although its leveling needed to be patched badly, Elder Scrolls Oblivion was a particularly good example of a sandbox game with an objective that you could finish quite quickly, but you could spend hundreds of hours, which I did, going off and doing the side quests without really affecting your route to the objective. But again, that's a genre-to-genre thing. You couldn't do something equatable in an adventure.
So one other point I want to make about games today versus back then is that back then the games were basically made by first one guy, like an artist like Richard Garriott, or then it became like 3 guys or 4 guys or 5 guys, and they could afford to take risks and do whatever they wanted, and if it was good, it got good reviews. If not, it got bad reviews. Nowadays, the gaming industry is like the movie industry, where every game costs tens of millions of dollars to make, except for some indie games. Which is trying to get back to that paradigm. But all the big titles, they cost huge amounts of money to make. And in the movie industry, I took some classes on this in school, and basically, they according to what they said in the classes at least, the producers have no idea what's going to be a good movie and what's not. They don't say okay, well, based on my experience in moviegoing, I think this movie will be good. They have a feeling, but they don't act on that. They just say, okay, we're going to have to fund 10 movies this year. We know that one of them will be a blockbuster, 2 of them will be okay, and the rest of them will probably all suck. And we don't know which ones they are, so we're just going to fund them all, and we'll market the heck out of all of them. But in terms of which titles we pick, we're going to be safe, so we'll go for the sequels. We think this number 2 will probably do well because number 1 did well. And this one is very similar to this other movie that did well, so it'll probably be good. And it's basically the same thing in the game industry nowadays. So even if you're making a really good game and you don't have the publisher marketing behind it, you can't have the polish that you need to make it really super good like maybe it was before 20, 30 years ago. You don't have the marketing to get it out there. I think that's the real challenge nowadays. Not that there aren't good games, but it's hard for the good games to float to the top and get that extra level of polish to make them great games.
I have heard developers talk about that a lot, especially over the past 10 or 15 years. But what you end up finding is that another level comes in where people jump on that bandwagon but have no intention of making that classic game in the end. They end up just putting out more garbage under the auspices of, remember back in the days when games were good and blah, blah, blah. And then it's another pile of manure on top of the old one.
How do you guys think the indie game scene's sort of tying into these differences between game dev then, game dev now, and how people are interpreting stuff? Because you get a lot of crappy, look, we're using gratuitous JRPG-style pixel art, which
I
I'm
want to
getting
know what Rasheen thinks. I want to know what Rasheen thinks about that because he's a game developer.
Unfortunately, he just had to go talk. Hang on. Rasheen, are you still here? Tell us about your game dev experiences on this front. No, he's actually got game developing to do.
Well, I got a guitar and stuff going in the background, but like I do game development using Unity 3D. I do mostly, personally, what I do is most of the production work and the music and sound and animation stuff like that. My buddy, a graphic designer, does most of the graphics and stuff, and I got a programmer that I'm working with. So I've been doing game design for probably about 10 years. So like 10 years. I've been doing it for probably like 15 or 20 years because I'm 33 right now. But I started making games when I was 12 years old. Man, I've been doing it my whole life. So basically, I like making RPGs, dungeon crawlers. The one we're working on right now is kind of similar to Diablo, not like Diablo 3 or anything like extravagant like that. It's more of like a really simple, like picture like Diablo 2, like kind of old school graphics, only like 3D. Only like 3D.
Unity, is it possible to, which is very much the epitome of a modern tool? Does developing old school stuff work quite well?
Yeah, it's not bad. Like, well, basically what I'm saying is it's without getting too much into development stuff, it's going to be basically like Diablo, only with like more players online. So it'll be more of like an Ultima type experience than a Diablo experience. Only like instead of going to a dungeon, done like Diablo with like, oh, I'm sorry. Instead of most games having like 3 or 4 players, this one will just have a more vast amount of players. But we're gonna get a Kickstarter campaign, and I'll have to give you guys a link next time I come in contact with you here.
One of the dangers of the indie scene is, or what's going on right now, is Steam, which is the modern marketplace for games, is like chock full of shit, to put it bluntly. And the danger is as a guy who lived through the Atari age, where you could go down to any drugstore and buy some really crappy game for $1 on the Atari, consumer confidence like drops like a rock, thrown off a cliff, when you basically can't really trust any game that you buy off of Steam. I can't tell you how many. I've got 500-something games on Steam that are indie games that I've gotten mostly from Humble Bundles or special deals or whatever, and most of them I would never play because they're just terrible. Steam's just full of this stuff, and if we don't like rein in the quality of this stuff, we could see another market crash.
Yeah, but I guess this is a problem of nowadays. Everyone can develop a game even without skills at all. I mean, if I want to put together a game by myself, I can do that on a weekend without any skills at all. I had some programming background back then and so, but I can do it. I can use some easy tools, stick together something, free sounds, free animations, free whatever, do a game. And even if I'm lucky, you know, I can put it on online somewhere to get at least a few bucks out of it. But I wouldn't try to do, but that's another story. The other
But
thing
you
is,
can use simple tools to make good stuff. I mean, for example, I suppose the homebrew interactive fiction scene is a good example, because you've got people using TADS, which is quite simple, or even Twine, which I know is just choose your own adventure, but you have got some fairly quality stuff coming through it. So simplicity of the tools isn't per se a problem, I don't think.
No. Yeah, totally agree with you. But just to say what Joe said before, and there's so many bad games out there, and I totally agree. We have the internet, we have the App Store, we had everything. App Store changed a lot from my perspective on games. Mobile gaming was a huge topic. App Store introduced it, so the players who decide how much they play and how much they pay for a game. I mean, this changed a lot to the App Store, because if I think about some adventure games, they are available in the App Store as well. They are not comparable price-wise if you put them in the App Store for a price that an adventure game normally would cost. So if they want to have the game in the App Store, they have to go to a lower price level. That means they are not able to develop a game maybe they would like to develop, content-wise, gameplay-wise, whatever. So this changed a lot as well, and I'm not so happy about that situation too. But what I like is talking about indie scene or so, companies like Watch It Eye Games or so, if they put in the old spirit graphical-wise, so pixelating it and put in an interesting, great story. I really enjoy the games so far. I really like them, and I hope that we see more from them, and yeah, I like that they continue that as much as possible.
I think we've pretty much beaten this topic into the ground, unless anyone has any remarkable insights.
So what was the final decision?
I guess we'll have to take a vote, but I think most of us are going to be kind of ambivalent. I mean, from my perspective, as someone who currently plays both old and new games, I usually have a couple of each that I flip between, and I do like. And with the harder adventure games, I do like leaving them to sit, and I think about the problem rather than referring to a solution necessarily. But yeah, I think the thing is, when looking at old games, we get to cherry pick the very best. We get to go and find the ultimate, and even Ultima 1, if you compare it to
I hope we didn't lose her. Everyone else still with us?
Yeah, we're fine.
Okay.
Yeah, when we look at good old games, for example, a lot. Okay, there's some crap old games on there as well now, but mostly it's the very best. Hence my project to find kind of the forgotten games. Why I'm going around and doing trades with people and saying, do you have any obscure games from the 80s or 90s that no one remembers? Because I want to find out what was in these forgotten games. I have a few of my own. And just as and in 10 years' time, it's the good games from now that will be remembered. So I don't think there's a significant advantage per se of new over old games. That it is very easy to be tempted to look through rose-tinted spectacles at the very best of old games. Anyone else? Closing thoughts? What do you guys feel? Are old games better than new? New games better than old? Stuart has a thing.
I'm just cleaning up here. I'm trying to put my stuff on shelves in the secret mission. But anyway, no, I think I agree with you. I think there's some good stuff, and there's some now, and there's some good stuff then. I think as a whole, like, my favorite games of all time are mostly then. I think it's probably because I play more games then than I do now. I think if I play more games now, I'd have more games that I really like now, like Shadow of Destiny I mentioned in the past is not that old, and it's a really good game, an adventure-type game. Well, it's not a classic point-and-click, but there are other good ones out there. You just have to play some games and find them.
I think at this point, unless there are any more opinions, we're into another show and tell, ladies' choice, as it were. What do you have? Do you have anything that doesn't fit any theme but it's worth showing off? Oh, Pascal has something. Hey,
Yeah,
the heyday of Virgin Interactive.
I'm a huge Dune fan, and I have two of these. So there's an as far as I know, there's a US and a UK release of that special edition of Dune. It's this so-called worm edition. We remember all the huge sandworm in Dune. Of course, everyone has seen the movie and knows about the sandworm. And this edition comes with a huge sandworm. If you open it, then you have like this huge sandworm in it, which actually has a big mouth. So you see.
That's cool.
And I like this version a lot. This is so amazing. And
it looks like the sandworm speaking for you now.
exactly, and it comes with the soundtrack CD as well. So it has a manual in it, and then it has the game CD and the soundtrack CD, which I heard is especially the Exos Dune Spice Opera soundtrack. This one is rare too, so it's hard to find that one so far I heard. And it is a good one. Listen to it time to time. And I'm happy to have that one in my collection as well. Dune. The game was not so... it was okay. It was a mixture, adventure game elements, strategy elements.
Dune 2 was rated more highly, but was more overtly strategic, as I recall.
Exactly. It was a strategy game, so I don't have Dune 2 in my collection because it was a strategy game.
Dune had fairly minimal adventure elements, so it's a while. So.
Exactly.
The thing about that game right there that really stands out, look up, if you do anything with that old Dune game right there, look up the soundtrack, because it was absolutely epically amazing, the soundtrack in that game.
Agree. Yeah, happy to have it. Yay, Dune. KG, you're muted.
If someone wouldn't mind showing something very quickly, I will be back in just a moment. Someone, bam.
Here's random stuff I just pulled out of the box while I get unpacking, but it's interesting, random stuff. So just two games by the same publisher. You can't see them. Microsoft Adventure. I'll do this better. This too much reflection. Microsoft Adventure, I think we talked about that recently on the forums, and then Adventure in Serenia. So I think both of these are pretty early IBM game releases, because Microsoft Adventure, they say, is the first game released for the PC, and they also put out for the rest of the time. And then this is the same style packaging. There's a few others they made in this type of packaging, like casino games and strategy games and whatever else, but both these are, adventures, obviously, and pretty cool ones. They're not that rare, actually. I don't think they're so rare. They seem to come up on eBay pretty often, but they're somewhat expensive, I guess, when they come up. So happy to have them both. Hope that filled the time requirement.
Yeah, we know Adventure in Serenia. We know the other name for the game as well, Wizard of Princess, the Wizard and the Princess.
Yeah. It's funny, actually, for a long time, people, apparently there was something on the internet that said it was called Adventures in Serenia. So people that were searching for it on eBay, they couldn't find it, and then eventually someone found, it's Adventure and not Adventures. So KG, I filled up your time for you while you took the break.
Thank you. I have a show and tell filler. This one actually isn't a game at all. It's a magazine, and you'll probably be seeing these in future installments because I've discovered a cache of them. This is Zero magazine from the UK. It's pretty much the reason I ended up doing computer journalism. They always did these photos. This is the Monkey Island 2 edition. They reviewed Monkey Island 2, and they always did these photographic covers that they mocked up. So you had that, well, almost always. So you you had when they had Populous 2, for example, they mocked up the god with a joystick, and there was this sort of contest between British games magazines as to who could be the most irreverent, I guess, at the time, and they pretty much had that sewn up. But they had fairly nice layouts. Again, I'm using Monkey Island 2 as an example because, yeah, who doesn't like Monkey Island? Except me, who didn't play it until the 2010s. And now I like it. And you've got stuff like a box out with 10 handy pirating tips. Make sure you have a very silly name. Jeremy Buttockhead or Hugo Porkbreath would do nicely. Have no respect for the dead.
That could be a good
poke in
topic.
the cemetery, never pirate names.
That could be a good topic for the next thing. Not only pirate names, but is Monkey Island 2 a good game?
Ooh, controversial.
Some people love it, and some people hate it.
I love it.
I think it's pretty damn good, but I'm a Johnny-come-lately. I mean, obviously, it's not Day of the Tentacle. I'll tell you what I really, really hate. I hate Maniac Mansion and Zach McCracken with a passion. I hate those early LucasArts games, and I use the word advisedly.
I like them, but they're hard to play. They're not as easy to play for people that didn't play them back in the day.
Copy of Maniac Mansion. There you go. Yeah, I found a shrink-wrapped NES copy of Maniac Mansion when I was unpacking. I have no idea what to do with it because I don't know anyone who wants NES games, but it's completely new, and I certainly don't want to play it. Yeah, so I just really loved the makeup of this, from the stupid fact on the spine, which is that every 7 seconds someone in the world buys some plasticine. I'm reasonably certain these were made up. There was a particularly memorable one about the size of a whale's penis versus a double-decker bus. To the adverts.
Avatar.
Yep, Joe's happy. To the obscure pop culture stuff. There was a British pop star called Lisa Stansfield. So in the back pages, they published the Lisa Stansfield Personal Organizer. I shit you not.
I like these guys.
Yeah, they were probably the best computer magazine of all time. I say that as someone who's actually done a fair bit of computer journalism. But yeah, so anyway, that's my secret.
You have to keep your wit about you when you're doing something like that. Like, I have seen some gaming magazines. There was for a short time, PC Gamer thought they were edgy and in your face and that kind of stuff. And sometimes it would work, and sometimes it would just horribly fall flat because they're trying too hard.
What's quite interesting with these guys is they actually did give bad reviews. I mean, you've still got your sort of inflated PC game scores, but you would see stuff that was sort of in the 60 and 50, 60%. It was still hard to get less than 50%, but here's their review of Red Baron, for example, which they gave 65% to, so that it wasn't everything gets, it wasn't sort of 75% is a bad score territory. And I think whereas Heart of China on the next page got 90%, which I think most Heart of China fans would agree was well deserved. Next.
Heart of China's an awesome game.
I've got a boring flight simulator to show. When I was younger, I was a big fan of Red Baron, I think as a lot of people were, and A-10 Tank Killer. The aerodynamic sort of action-y flight sims. They were a lot of fun, kind of action games, mostly. When I was younger, I unfortunately bought Falcon 3.0, which is one of the most complicated flight simulators ever produced. I do not have the box for that anymore, but I got decent at that game. For some reason, I bought Falcon 4.0 after 3.0. And what's interesting about this particular one is there's two versions. There's a couple versions of this floating around out there. This is the original release that came in this really rockin' like binder thing, and the disc was in a pocket in the back.
Here's Falcon 3.0.
Yeah, cool game, but man, this manual should tell you everything you need to know about trying to play this game, because it's tabbed. I swear, if you studied this and practiced enough, you could probably at least get a Falcon off the ground. You would die, but you could probably get one into the air.
I remember when you actually still can get points towards a pilot's license by playing the Microsoft Flight Sim games.
Yeah, this was something else, but this binder is really cool. I wish more games would come out in these sort of things, because it's really, I don't know, just something about it just feels really official. It's like a role-playing game. It's got some maps of, like real places in it that you probably can't even get maps of anymore because of satellites and whatever. But,
it's so sad that anytime anybody gets a map in our group, they instantly go, "Yeah, it's like a role-playing game."
Yeah. Anyway, a cool thing. If you find it in this binder, there's just something about this binder that's cooler than a box to me. It's really high quality. It's got the foil stamp and all that kind of stuff on it. So, not necessarily an interesting game, but the one that's cool on the shelf for sure.
I found this map without any discs. I don't understand what's going on. You idiot! We're in a gas station.
I have an Ultima 3 map without any discs or any reason to have this Ultima 3 map. Did I get it in a gas station?
You just need to put it in your. You need to put it in your glove compartment. And every now and again, when you have when you have someone you don't know very well in the car, you pull it out and just reference it and go, "Okay, all right, we're going west. All right."
So I suppose we're at the next question, and I'm informed that it's probably Stuart's fault, and I see that he's slunk off in shame. Somehow we collectively voted for this, which is fine evidence against democracy. Must all game collectors be super nerdy, or can some be attractive and cool? The person who suggested this, and to a certain extent the people who voted for it, really deserve to suffer now. So, hello, Stuart.
I didn't suggest it.
Not your idea?
No, I did suggest it. It's a joke.
Yeah, well, everyone always votes for the joke option.
Yeah, you know what? Actually, I was actually thinking about this morning when I found out we actually picked this topic. It reminds me of that song that guy, was it named H.P. Mendoza, that's in our group, that he put out in 10 Years I'll Be Cool, which is really cute. It's like, I guess, a lot of people that back then were socially awkward because they had a hobby that was not shared by the majority of their peers, because this was a pretty niche thing in the 80s especially, and even in the 90s, PC gaming was not a big deal. It was console gaming. It was Nintendo and Sega and PlayStation, whatever, and PC gaming had always been niche. So people that never, for that reason or other reasons, I don't know, but people that had these niche hobbies, and then now you find like sort of your natural crowd, like through the internet, like, oh wow, this is the guy that I would have been amazing friends with if he would live next door to me instead of 500,000 miles away. You just, in that circle, you gain some coolness for sure. Whether you're actually any cooler in real life, I don't know about.
There's a larger conversation in this topic that is actually more interesting than a lot of us probably think on the surface, and it's something we've talked about in my little group a lot. There's a psychological phenomenon in the whole of nerd culture period, of which we are a small subset. Which is, we've been going to the Dragon Con convention that I've talked about before for about 12 years now, and since we first went, things have popped up in popular culture like Big Bang Theory and other little things that have kind of had this sort of cooling effect on nerds. And we've definitely seen it as, if you look at Dragon Con as like a collective, which it is, there's like 100,000 people down there, and it's this collective of nerds. The population has changed considerably in 12 years. It has shifted from what I would consider to be classic nerds in the old days, and slowly has turned into this sort of frat party, which isn't a judgment on frat party, it's just a observation of fact. Cool-looking people, kind of hipster party scene that is not at all like it was 12 years ago. And it's a pretty modern phenomenon where people, I think young people that are looking for a tribe are kind of latching on to what we're doing. I think we are, if nerd is cool, then we have to be the coolest people on earth, because we were
nerdy before they were.
So in a way that works, where PC game collectors end up being cool because we're freaking nerdier than, standard nerds. So it's been an interesting. You could write a psychological study paper on what's going on right now for sure.
Well, I agree with you there, Joel. Much like my disagreement from the last part, but I happen to be seeing on Facebook now the South by Southwest Festival went on all last week in Austin, Texas, and Austin, Texas's phrase is "Keep Austin Weird." So, because I follow a lot of game developers who happen to live in Austin, it's very funny that back in the old days they were the young crowd that were saying, this is terrific and South by Southwest is wonderful and we're part of keeping Austin weird and things like that. Now that we're all older, and I grew up and got older with them, I now watch from the sidelines and I see these same people saying what you're saying. It's not the same anymore. They're doing all kinds of weird stuff. They're really odd, these people, and I think it's not because they're doing anything different. It's just because there's more people that jumped on and got into this vibe, and we're getting older. You were saying, are you saying that Dragon Con, the convention that you have been going to for the past 12, 13 years, has it changed for the better or for the worse? Are you happy that the change is going on, or does it bother you?
We've discussed this at length. I personally think it has changed for the worst. However, I will footnote that with I accept what is going on, and we have changed our behavior to accept what is going on down there, because it's just the way things are, and being a crotchety old nerd isn't going to isn't going to change anything. It's not going to make me happier, and it's not going to make them happier. At the end of the day, I'm happy to be able to have a Facebook group about PC gaming that we can get 530 people into that, whether they're like us and played these games forever ago and are super knowledgeable about them, or they're new people who just want to know more about them. It's a win either way. There's no loss there. So to answer your question, Joe, Dragon Con is not as good as it used to be for me. I'm trying to change.
That's the best attitude ever.
I'm in a lot of fringe subcultures. I seem to be one of these people who's doomed to be an outlier. I'm very geeky. I own Drinking Horn. I like death metal. I'm queer. So on and so forth. If there is a minority tick box, I am clearly white to the point of being transparent, despite coming from an area that's theoretically quote unquote exotic. But beyond that, if there is a minority tick box, I have it, and a lot of these are subcultural. And I think what's quite nice about the increasing call value of nerd culture is that a wider variety of people feel able to express their inner nerdiness. You've no longer got that sort of division where, you know, unless your parent, when I was growing up, generally speaking, if your parents were wealthy enough to own a PC, then you could be into PC gaming. But that was, they were $2,000, and that was when $2,000 was actually, you know, real money. I mean, not the sort of devalued $2,000 that we have now, which is still plenty of money by anyone's standards. It's become a lot more accessible, and the internet's also made it a lot more accessible. So I think a lot of what we're seeing, I mean, apart from the joy of complaining about young people these days, which I've been doing since I was about 16, you've got a lot more people who are able to access these nerdy pursuits, and I think the sort of phenomenon that is cosplay is a really great example of that accessibility crossover, and people feeling free to express it. And you've also reached a critical mass where, you know, it used to be that dressing up in a Star Trek costume was enough to have rocks thrown at you in most self-respecting communities. Now it's something you can go out and do without anyone thinking more than, hey, that's an interesting / weird / actually kind of cool hobby. And you've got a lot more egalitarianism.
Personal experience that not only is it acceptable to do that, but the general public now will fawn over you and talk about how cool it is, and, you know, want to take pictures with you and grab onto you and do all this kind of weird stuff that, you know, in the 90s was nowhere close to have been acceptable.
I think it's kind of nice to have that acceptability, although we've kind of lost our nicheness, which, as one of life's elitists, I kind of regret in some ways. But hey, there's only 500 and something of us in the big box gaming collectors group, so we're still better than everyone else, by God. I think the greater accessibility and egalitarianism to the reduction in barriers to people getting into this incredibly cool range of hobbies more than makes up for the irritation value of, you know, having kids kicking their balls into our yard.
There's also there's an underlying young people. Try to get my thoughts together on this. Young people now, gaming is the main form of entertainment for young people, more so than movies and television and all this kind of stuff. Well, the people that did not grow up playing Ultima 3 or any, you know, Sierra games or anything from back in the day, at some point in their life get interested in the history behind what it is they're doing. And that probably is what is making big box PC gaming, because gaming started on PCs to a certain extent anyway. So if you're going to research the history of gaming, you pretty much have to look at the big box PC gaming scene, and that would contribute a lot to this cool thing we're seeing as well.
I'm not sure that gaming started on the PC. I think that's debatable. But I would agree that, you know, back in the day, the console games were more like kid stuff, like, you know, Space Invaders and things like that, and Pac-Man, quote unquote kid stuff. Whereas the PC games were much more advanced in terms of, you know, they required a lot more thinking to figure out what to do, to make your maps, to figure out the puzzles.
I think the early PC games were targeting an older audience, yes.
Right, right. So from that perspective,
they still are too. I mean, the majority of PC gamers, last time I checked the statistics of this, were sort of mid-20s to 40s and 50s, rather than being teenagers. So PC gamers tend to be a slightly older, slightly more affluent demographic in general, but more so then.
Sorry, continue.
No, I said what I was going to say, but something else I was thinking on that note. I mean, given the fact that, you know, a couple people said that PC games back then is different than it was now. The total computer, somewhat wealthy at least, or have, I guess, decide to spend all of your disposable income on that hobby for us today. But I mean, I know like the games that I played earliest were like text adventures and things like that, and they helped teach me like how to read because I was encouraged to read to understand what was going on the screen, and my dad was playing the game. And I know that I feel very confident that adventure games that I played, they really helped develop my thinking processes. And sometimes there's something stupid like the Monkey Wrench and Monkey Island 2, but a lot of times you have to really figure out what's going on. And even RPGs, similar thing. You have to make it strategize and figure out what to do, and it's definitely much more brain stimulating than sitting in front of a TV and just vegging out for like 3 hours, like I used to do sometimes, and some of my friends did. So I wonder if there's any correlation between people that played games back then and higher incomes today or better education. I'm just speculating. I have no idea. But I would wonder if there's any way, if it's just completely random or if there's any correlation there. I'm just bringing that up in the topic. I don't know either.
I like to think I'm clever, but on the other hand, I ducked out of many opportunities to get higher income in exchange for living in the middle of nowhere and looking out at countryside. So
you made the choices.
You've got rational decision making there.
You made the choices that you wanted to make, but that was probably good for you to do that. But a nice drinking horn, by the way. But I just I don't know. In the topic of are people cool today that weren't cool back then? I wonder if that has anything to do with it. I have no idea, honestly, but just a speculation.
I guess it is just much more common these days. We have mentioned a few things earlier, like you have every device, everyone. Who has?
Hi, David.
Who has an handy a mobile phone which is the smartphone today. So everyone has a smartphone. Everyone games on smartphones. If you go to the subway or wherever, you see everyone is gaming. Girls, women are much more into gaming than years ago, I guess. And there are some games which are dominated by women and played by women. So if they are in a relationship with someone who is gaming, they are much more opener to the topic, I think, than it would be like maybe 20 years ago, where it maybe would be a bit dominated by men at all. I'm not sure. Maybe Joe can share some of his wisdom from back then, how it was. But
I think Joe's getting fed up with being referred to as the old man of the mountains.
I just think you have, as we mentioned, you see it everywhere in the TV. Even in big movies, there's a president, and if the president has like 5 minutes to breathe, he's sitting in front of a gaming system and then plays a bit. So it's much more a wider topic and more acceptable and accessible for everyone. And
it's not stigmatized anymore. It used to be.
Exactly.
You were inherently uncool if you were into this shit.
I think so, and if I see what's going on in Germany, this retro scene, if you look into that, there are so many interested into all old game systems, all consoles, and if there's an event where they show all devices, all consoles, or so, they go bigger and bigger, and more events occur during the months, and the audience is rising for that. It's getting bigger, and I like that. It's nice to see.
My tapping keyboard brought me up. Hey, David. We're currently on the subject of must game collectors be nerdy, or can we be attractive and cool? I mean, obviously we're all very attractive, so we've gone straight to the cool.
Well, hi guys, by the way.
Hey, nice to meet you.
I don't know if my microphone is...
It's fine. We can hear you.
Okay. Well, it really depends now, such as I think Pascal was saying. I didn't hear everything, but nowadays almost everyone just plays, especially console games, but everyone plays games more or less, even like Facebook games, if not. And yeah, I think that apart from us, there are other attractive people playing old school games, school computer games. Back then, I think it was more like a geeky thing to do. I mean, it really depended on the games. It's like today, if you play a certain type of games, you are considered this or that, and if you play like the newest GTA or the newest FPS, you are considered like not considered, but people think that that you ain't like a geeky or a nerdy guy or girl.
How about that thing where people who play Call of Duty and so on are kind of thought of as casuals and not being properly into gaming? That really surprised me the first time I saw it, because I played the early Call of Duty games. I had great fun. COD 2 is great on LAN. And then suddenly people who played Call of Duty became regarded as casuals within the gaming scene, which seems to be almost gamers looking upon people who aren't serious enough about gaming as somehow uncool.
I read an interesting article to build on what David was saying there a while back. It was when Farmville was a big deal. I don't know if Farmville's still a big deal. I don't think it's as big a deal as it used to be, but it was arguing that Farmville is actually one of the most important games that's ever been released, and the reason that they gave was because Farmville functioned like a drug that got people addicted to gaming. So it was really simple, really easy to do. Millions of people were doing it. And once they got sick and tired of Farmville, then they started looking to graduate up into more complicated sorts of games, whether that was on consoles or PCs. One of the advantages of Farmville was it was mostly a PC-oriented thing, so then everyone who was playing it probably had a PC. I know there was a mobile version, but at the time it was kind of a PC thing. So they probably graduated up into more PC sort of titles. So Facebook, I think, had a lot to do with gaming breaking out into the non-geek kind of collective.
So
You know, that's really true.
So you're saying that Farmville was the gateway drug, so?
Do you think that's really true? Because I imagine the people that played Farmville graduated to Candy Crush.
I know a lot of people who are into Candy Crush. I know a lot of people who are into Candy Crush, though, who then moved on to other sort of phone-oriented games.
There's a farming simulation out there, and every year I go to the Gamescom in Cologne, and there's a new version of Farming Simulator, and I always ask myself who are the people who playing that kind of games, but maybe that is another gateway drug game as well, I'm not sure.
That's sort of a hardcore simulator, though, isn't it? It's sort of like those rail simulators where you can plot the exact route map of tube trains in London or metro trains in Paris. I mean, that's a whole different ilk of gamer altogether.
Well, I think that Farmville was like accessible to like everyone who had a Facebook. So moms and dads who just signed on Facebook just started playing it, and people just realized how a game can be addictive. Not only Farmville. So it opened like the gates for people who had like those early taboos from like playing video games is bad and playing this is that and that. And then just like when all the people started playing, they would like, I remember like the early stages, everyone was like, well, gaming is not good, but Farmville is an exception because Farmville you don't kill this and that, and Farmville you don't do this and that. And it's like, it's a free game, even though we spend lots of money trying to play it every day, but it's a free game, it doesn't hurt anyone, it's not a drug, it's like, it's someone you just casually play for like 5 minutes every 10 minutes. So like,
make you stab your neighbor.
Yeah. And like,
you raise a good point too. That's something I never really considered, which was in the '90s. There was such a stigma against gaming. Mortal Kombat was all over the news. Congress was telling everyone that games were killing people. All gamers were nuts. We were going to shoot up schools. We're all Satan worshippers and stuff. So gaming had that stigma for a decade, easy. Farmville is just an example. I should probably say Facebook hits the scene. Simple, casual games like land, and all of a sudden, mom and dad are playing games, and maybe they're realizing that games aren't like causing people to, hail Satan and all this kind of stuff.
Do you think it makes a difference that our generation is now mom and dad?
And maybe mom and dad are now Satan worshippers and are going to shoot up schools.
Well, we. Speaking for Satan worshippers, we have been proselytizing really hard. Why is this stuck on me? Someone say something.
Come back to the
Well,
fold,
there's a lot.
you demon lord.
We're dumbstruck.
No, it's like I'm like a little bit shocked because I'm considered a dad, but it's okay.
Yeah,
Yeah,
He's
sure.
old now.
we are now. We are now in our 30s, and that I think makes us the parental generation. We are the faces of responsible adulthood, ladies and gentlemen.
David is a father, so that makes him a crotchety old nerd. The rest of us.
I agree on what David said before, and I guess it's another example for our earlier discussion to say how is it more cool nowadays. You know, you've got so much more games that are easy to access, which are free of cost most of the time at the beginning, and so many playing it even don't say they're playing games. It's just like something they do for entertainment for a short time, and don't really consider that as they are now hardcore gaming whatsoever. And they have a much more understanding if others are more interested into the topic. I mean, take The Sims as an example. Who really played The Sims? But it was one of the best-selling game of the newer times. No? So I guess everyone.
I had an ex. She didn't play any games except she loved The Sims.
Yeah. And it was in Germany. It was The Sims. Every release of Sims was top 3 games of the month. It was bestseller. And I don't even know if they changed anything. I just guess all the time they put a new number on the box and put it in the shelf, and the guys go there and bought it. I never played it. I've never seen it. I can't really judge anything.
Oh God, I was made to review Sims 3. It's genuinely terrible.
Okay.
Sure, it's one of the best-selling PC games of all time.
Yeah. But
I don't care. It's terrible. I
don't understand it myself.
I don't get it. It's obviously not for me. I mean, I'm sure mechanically it's a very good game, and you can see why it would appeal to people. But from the perspective of what I enjoy, it's absolutely not it. And I quite like sport.
It scratches that same itch that Farmville scratches, I think, for people, which is creating something and having some sort of ownership over whatever that is. It seems to be a popular thing for a lot of people.
Yeah, The Sims of today is Minecraft, by the way.
Right.
I kind of like Minecraft. I like building things more than I like sort of watching something.
I remember playing the first Sims, but nowadays people just like. I remember like this Christmas I started collecting Sims, and my girlfriend was like all over my collection of Sims, and I bought her. I mean, I loaned her my Origin account, which has the Sims 2, which has the Sims 2 complete edition, and at the same time, I gave her my Christmas present, which I think was like a Pink Floyd CD, and I remember like she was like, "Oh, thank you," and when I gave her like the Sims 2 account, she exploded with happiness. So I remember like she was being, "Oh, why are you so sad?" And I was like, "Well, I just bought you I spent like $10 on a Pink Floyd CD and other stuff for you, and you just like ignored it, and then when I gave you like my free Sims 2 collection, you was like, "Oh my God, I love you." So it's like it's an easier game to get into. It's like girls, and especially girls, not trying to judge anyone, but girls in particular, they're like, when you talk about games, when I say, "Oh, I collect computer games, I have this, that, and that," I remember playing Sims 1 a lot, and she was like, "Oh, Sims 1, I didn't really play Sims 1, but Sims 2 is great, and blah, blah, Sims 3, and I'm waiting for Sims 4, which is now up." And I'm like, well, it kind of counts as being a gamer, but, like,
it does count as being a gamer, but...
It's a simpler subject to talk with people about games. It's like known games. If I'm going to start talking, especially with the people of my generation, which is a little bit younger than yours, but if I start talking about Doom or Wolfenstein or games that I grew up with, they're just like, "Yeah, I remember those games, yeah." But if you talk about a game that's more popular, especially nowadays, like Call of Duty, Sims, other games,
no bar for entry. It's that sort of casual gamer thing.
They explode with, "Oh yeah, Sims, I did this, and that, blah, blah," and Call of Duty, "Oh yeah, I headshotted this guy, and I knifed that one, blah, blah." So it's like...
I think it goes back to the egalitarianism, because more people feel they can get at this. And also, the thing you raised about girls feeling they can play it, I think that's quite interesting, because you did have this sort of bar of this stuff is not for girls, which I think
Exactly.
meant that a lot of people of our generation kind of, you had a thing where a lot of women played adventure games and RPGs, and you had a lot of women who played early MMOs, but never sort of did anything that would gender themselves.
Totally agree, and that is what I think. I mean, I know we are PC big box collector group, but that is what I think Nintendo did really a great job with the Wii. They made at the time where you had Xbox and PlayStation battle, who has a better system, more graphics, more power, more everything. They come with a completely new idea, and bringing, like, graphic is not everything. It's entertainment, enjoyment, and bringing all together. And so you create a system for the whole family, and they can all together. Moms and dads and kids can play these Wii games and have fun, and on an individual base or on a group base if they want to play it all together. And I think they really did a pretty good job with that. And that again opens a bit the understanding about gaming, and interesting. And you now can talk with your dad about gaming. I mean, who wants to talk with his parents about gaming also? It's not your
Actually,
parents.
this is quite interesting because Larry 3 here, I actually was one of the first games I played through with my mum, who is downstairs now. She's an outlier, I know, because she was a computer programmer and she was a DBA when I was growing up, and so on. But we had that unusual sort of relationship where I had a parent who understood video games and who encouraged me to play them and to use computers in general. And I think now, again, partly because of generational shift and partly because of greater accessibility, we've got people who, kids these days have parents who understand that computer games are a legitimate form of entertainment as opposed to something that's going to induce crime or devil worship or something like that. And I think that's kind of a lot to do with the big shift we're seeing.
I totally agree. I totally agree. If I remember my childhood, when I was early getting in contact with adventure games, the early Sierra text adventure games, my parents didn't have English back then in school if they were younger, so their English skills were really limited. So we didn't play these games together. I was troubling playing them. I was like 9 to 11, something like that, and my English skills were not that good at all. So I had problems to get access to these games, but my parents never even tried that. So there were only limited games we really had a chance to play or enjoy together. This was games like, I remember I played Zokoban with my dad, I played Lemmings with my dad. These were the games we sit together and play. And my dad is still playing Lemmings today on his laptop, and he enjoys it. But there were a lot of options for us in Germany. Games from the US or from other countries were mostly in English. It took a time when they started to translate them completely into German. This was not given for the earliest games. So this separates us from having a playground to enjoy together. And nowadays, this isn't an option at all. There are so many games you don't even need to know any language at all, like Wii or whatsoever, and you can enjoy it in the whole family.
By the way, I really don't like those adventure games where there's no talking and it's like some guy going like, and they don't want to localize it, so they cheap out and they have some fake language or something. It drives me crazy. As a side point.
When I was younger, like, my mom was not really into gaming, but she had a programming course so that she could get a job as a secretary, I think. And I remember when I was younger, I would play Doom 2 and Doom 2000. Like the first game I ever played, the first game I completed, I was 4 years old, was Doom. But yeah, I had the God mode, so it was easy. I think I took a year or so, but yeah. But I remember this one time when I was at school, I was at first or second grade. I just came from school, I had my computer for I think a month or so. I came home, nobody home, no food on the table, nothing, and I was like, okay, what the hell? So when I came to my room, my mom was like playing Doom 2 for like the entire morning, like trying to pass this mission. And I was like, okay, what are you doing? She was like, oh, I'm almost, I almost got it. I think that like the computer always does this and this and that, so I'm like trying to counter it. And I was like, yeah, mom, yeah, I'm like a little bit hungry, you know. But
Make your own damn lunch.
yeah, but it was like, I think it was like the first and I think the only time when, or the only specific game that my mother liked, it was like that RTS, and I think she liked a spin-off of Puzzle Bubble. she liked that. She liked that also. But yeah, but I remember like when I told my mom, like, I was like, okay, mom, I like Doom 2 and Doom 2000, blah, 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 but I'm going to my neighbor's house to play Doom. And she was like, oh, but shooting is not, I really don't like it. Shooting, you do this, this, and that, and you become violent, and you become like this. And I remember like one time I said, well, when you're playing Doom, you're killing innocent, you're killing troops of enemy people, of enemy houses. So it's like the same thing, but you're just like killing demons, and you're like killing the evil. Isn't that what you're supposed to do? And she was like, yeah, but I don't like you playing those games, blah, 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 blah. So I'm going to, instead of that, why don't you just, I'm going to buy you like this new game I saw. I think it's Age of Empires. It's like, it's historical and it's beautiful, blah, blah, blah. So yeah, she didn't really enjoy me playing FPS games at that time, even though she had like this brief connection with gaming. But yeah, since then, she just ignored like the fact that I used to play video games. Sometimes when I started collecting, she would be interested. I think she even hinted me that she had a Spectrum in the attic. Even though 2 weeks of cleaning after I didn't saw the Spectrum, I only saw like a ton of cassettes. But
Which is actually a way to get you to clean the attic.
Well, yeah, it was like, I mean, I found the original adapter, so it's something. It might still be in there somewhere.
My dad hated Doom so much. I was like, I guess 15 or so when Doom was released, and I played it with my older brother. We had a PC room in the basement where we played a lot of games and had connected our PCs and so. And he hated the first time when he saw me playing it, and I run around with a chainsaw and slashing all the enemies. That was too much for him to take. So he forced us, like, I guess, million times to uninstall it, and he was standing next to each us and forced us to uninstall it and waited until it was uninstalled, and we waited until he left the room to install it again and play it again without sound at all. Or we arranged so to pretend to go to sleep and wait until everyone was sleeping and then go back to the basement and play for like half an hour or so. But I told him later that Doom teaches me so much, not about gaming, but about networking and stuff. Now, when we try to connect our PCs, BNC networks, installing network drivers, and so that was my first entry into this whole computer networking topic, and I learned so much due to that stupid game, because we wanted to get our PCs connected to play. You don't have things like that today. You have a console, you have online groups where you meet, hit play, and that's it. Back then, I needed more time to get PCs connected than enjoying the game. It took us like, if a friend comes over with his PC, different network drivers, different network cards, it took us like 2 to 3 hours to connect our PCs. And then we were so happy that we have connected our PCs, but we were so tired to play. So we played like an hour for 2 or 3 hours before having all these technical issues solved. And I told him later that it really taught me a lot, and it brought me into IT and all the things I do today. So thanks to that, I learned a lot. So I don't think it was so bad to have a double shotgun or so at all, because
I think that's a really good point. Because of the time at which we got into gaming, it predicated us knowing quite a lot about technology, which, going back to the cool discussion, obviously makes us cool because we can make shit work. Which is an automatically useful skill. That's all we have time for the recorded program right now. The rest of you will be continuing in the after show. Thank you everyone for participating. I hope I've not been too awful or too drunk a host. Cheers.
Thanks a lot, KG, for having us.